Welcome to an introduction to text mining with Voyant. I'm making this video primarily for my classes, but anyone is welcome to follow along. Everything I'm using in this demonstration is publicly available. Since we're going to be text mining, I need to have a text source. Project Gutenberg is a good place to find literary text files. I'm going to use an example that I haven't read, but one of my students suggested. Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. So first I need to save the text file to my computer. You'll see that Gutenberg has a plain text version available. I'm right-clicking and doing a Save Link As. And instead of this number that Project Gutenberg assigned, I've already saved this and I gave it a more friendly name. So you can do that. If you want to click through, or there isn't a plain text version available, basically you could, if there is a text version and you've clicked through, you can always right click here and save as. You can of course copy directly from a web page and then put it into a text file if you want. You can paste within the add text to Voyant, but it's usually a little bit better to put it in a actual text file because maybe you'll need it later. Also, I want to show you how to do some cleaning of your text. My default program is Notepad++, but if any normal plain text editor will work, like TextEdit on the Mac or Notepad on Windows. I use this one because I do coding frequently. Sublime Text is also a good choice if you're using a Mac, or if you like just the dark background. That's default with Sublime Text. What I want to do here is delete any text that isn't part of the analysis. Since Voyant is going to count all the words and their location in the file, I only want the words that are actually part of the book. So from the start here, I'm going to delete everything until the text starts. And the same at the very end, because at the very end, at least on the Project Gutenberg texts, they'll have the license file, and we don't want that counting as part of the word count. So here's the end, so I'll delete all of that. And then save the file. I've of course already done that. And so I called mine Ethan Frome Clean. And then I just click on Upload, select the file, and do it that way. Now you can, of course, type in a URL, but remember that if you're pulling this from a site that is paginated, so you have to click to go to the next page, or by chapters, it's only going to pull in what is on the page of that URL. I've had students do that before by mistake. So it's best to find something that has the full text rather than having to put in all the URLs for all the lines. Plus there's usually extra text on web pages that you're pulling in. Now you could use this to analyze texts on news sites and things like that if you were just interested in word count and frequency. So I mean that's an option that's built in right here. There's also you can open an existing corpus or collection of texts. They have Shakespeare's plays, Austen's novels. And things will look a little different in this than they will with a single text. So I'm going to go back to my Ethan Frome Cleaned, and this is just the file name that's pulling in. And I'm going to hit refresh to make sure I have the starter text. There we go. And you'll see that there are a number of tools that are displayed. And personally, I find tools like these most useful as a way of re-examining my own reading of a text to notice word patterns and usage that I might have missed. It's important to realize what Voyant can and can't do. Voyant does not purport to replace close reading, and it also makes no attempt at analyzing the sentiment of the text. What Voyant can do is show word and phrase frequency and which words are closely related in the text using different visualizations. In general, clicking on or selecting any word in any tool will change the other tools to reflect your selection. And partly that depends on whether or not, like in the trends, the tool is located a term in a place in the document. So, I mean, if we look at the Cirrus visualization, Cirrus meaning cloud, word cloud, there's a slider at the bottom to include more terms or make it a shorter list. It is only giving you just the pure numbers and the size of the text by the frequency. And word clouds are sort of the low-hanging fruit in the visualization world. I find they have limited uses other than to give a general sort of first impression of the most frequently used words. It is, however, the easiest visualization for people to understand since it is familiar and uses skills that humans are good at, like recognition, comparison, and color. So each of the words is given a different color, and our ability to recognize the larger font size, slightly smaller font sizes, is pretty good. So we can sort of easily understand what the visual logic is of this. You'll notice that when I hover the mouse over a word, it's giving me a count. So 192 here for Ethan. And that corresponds to what you're seeing here in the summary. So this is just a sheer count of the number of words in the corpus. In this case, the corpus is just a single file or single text. There's also the terms. Again, the same information displayed a little bit differently. Links. So the most commonly used words are here in blue highlighted, and it's showing you the words that are connected to them. And this is connected to them in terms of space in the text. So these are very close together. The reader is simply a way for you to actually go through and read, or to click on a term and see the frequency. So you'll notice, so this is at the beginning of the text on the left, at the end of the text on the right, and the frequency of the word that I've selected, which in this case was voice. So if I click over here, it'll take a few seconds to load up. If I scroll, selected, I can try to go and find my terms. You can also select terms from within the reader, and you'll notice that these two tools change over here. So moment, once I've selected it, it starts highlighting it throughout. It's changed this to moment. So what you're seeing here in trends is again the beginning of the text on the left, end of the text on the right, and the frequency as the other axis. And when I click on a specific word and location, the context and the reader changed to match that. So here the context allows you to sort of zoom in from the distant viewing or distant reading to see how that word is actually being used in the sentence. So Voyant does a sort of nice job at a very low entry cost, free, and a little effort, to get these varied views. I'm going to switch over to document terms. So document terms is basically giving you the same thing as the regular terms here on the left, but you'll notice that the tools within this section don't have location tied to them, so location in the text, whereas some of the other tools do. And that's what you're seeing here is location in the text, from the beginning of the text on the left to the end of the text on the right. So these are showing you the same information, but just in a different visualization, for different learning styles. What makes sense, I like the trends myself, as a way to look at where the word is occurring the most in the document, and then using that to zoom in either here in the context or in the reader. Now if you ever have your display and you want to reset it, you can use the reset buttons, or you can just hit refresh and refresh the entire corpus. You can also, under this panel, look at the summary, the documents. In this case, there's only one document. If you had multiple documents, they would be listed here, and you could look at the number of words, etc. Phrases. So this gives you an actual count of the phrasing and how many times that phrase is reused. This could be useful if you're doing your own writing. If you want to see if you are overusing a certain phrase. The bubble lines I don't find particularly useful, especially with a single text. Maybe if I click on Ethan here, you'll see. So it's giving me the ability to hide or remove terms. So basically this is the left to right display, beginning of the text on the left, end of the text on the right, with the frequency of each word. And it's kind of hard to recognize with all of these, and make any sort of meaning from it. It makes a little bit more sense with a corpus, because then you can remove some of these terms. Let's say remove that, and so you can see where the concentrations are. You can see that in the trends, and for me this is a little more useful than the bubble lines. Now I mentioned that I hadn't read this text. Since a title character's first name is the most frequently used word, I might suspect, or at least hypothesize, that the story is being told by a narrator other than Ethan Frome himself. If I'm looking at the links tool, waiting for it to zoom in here, I can see that Maddie is connected to Xena, but Xena doesn't have a strong connection with Ethan. If these characters are involved in a love triangle, as the student who suggested the text mentioned, I suspect that it may not go all that well for Xena and Ethan, and that perhaps there's more connection between Ethan and Maddie. And the prevalence of said, that might indicate to me that perhaps this is being told by a narrator who is referring to Ethan said, Maddie did this, Ethan said, or Maddie said, Ethan felt. So you can see how the links connections work. So literally these are adjacent to each other unless they have been included on a stop list. Now I might want to remove said and see what happens then. And I can add that to a stop list. First thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to hit refresh. Sometimes the links tool, after you change your stop list, it doesn't update all the time. So at least I've noticed that's a sort of a quirk. So here I clicked on the options, and I'm going to click on edit the stop words list. So this is just the stop list. Voyant automatically will generate a stop list and include most pronouns, conjunctions, other common words to the default stop list. But it pays to check that before drawing too many conclusions if you're doing this for research. So I'm going to add, said. And then click confirm. So you'll notice that my word, the sizing changed slightly. Now we see Ethan, Maddie, and Zena more prominently displayed. And I'll click on the links to see if what's changed here. Okay, so now we can see there's some differences by removing said. We notice that I think it was Matt, which was in the first one, is removed completely. So that could mean that Matt was connected by said to our main three characters. So now we see Maddie connected with Ethan, stood, came, silver, Ethan connected to Maddie and Zena, Zena now connected a little better between Ethan and Maddie. Now in order to make any sort of real conclusions, given the fact that I haven't read this, I'd probably need to go in and zoom in and see what's going on in the text. Not a replacement for close reading. One thing that you can do with the trends is view which character. So we start off, we don't hear much from, or we don't hear Maddie spoken much, but then she has a steady climb, slight decline, and then over. Whereas Zena has a much more sort of up and down arc. So we might hypothesize what might be causing that. Now remember, you can always click on to any one of those to view the context. So it's important to remember that Voyant is just giving you word and phrase count and the location within the text or corpus. All of the visualizations work from the same data, the text, but different visualizations work better for different people and for different situations. Now if you wanted to save these visualizations or export them, there's an option under each of the tools to do an export URL, so you can actually get a link if you want to. So this is export URL for this view, export view, or export visualization. Now if I want just an image, I can click export this as a PNG, and you can change the scaling if you want to, but I'm just going to leave it at 1, meaning the sizing. Now a lot of people get confused at this point. So the text here actually explains what you need to do. This code below, this HTML code, if you're pasting it onto a web page that you own, you can use this, or you can just simply right click and then do a save image as on this little thumbnail. It'll actually be a full-size image, but I can save it, or if you want to view it, you can see it here. The background is transparent, so it won't necessarily be black. So I can save this image to my computer. I might want to rename that something better than download. Now if you want the actual link though to the visualization, you can just do the URL, and so here's my link right here to the visualization. And what's nice about this is that it's actually, when people open this, they can interact with the visualization itself, and even change some things. And this works for any of the tools that you find interesting. One thing that I'll mention before letting you go is that the document segments, I may have mentioned this, but they if you're dealing with a corpus, so in other words something that has multiple documents, the document segments change to show you that instead, so here we're looking at Pride and Prejudice, frequency, here we're looking at Sense and Sensibility. So some of the tools make a little bit more sense in the corpus view rather than the document view. And so here with the bubble lines, the more common words, and of course Mr., Miss, and Mrs. is going to be very common. Also, I don't know if I pointed out that in the reader, it also gives you a visual indication that you're moving over to a new text. So each novel has its own color here, and you can see shorter novels have a much shorter block, and the size of the color block indicates how the most frequently used words are appearing within that text. So very common words, perhaps in this text right here. So hopefully this has helped you get started into Voyant. You can definitely play around with it. As I said, just if you want, just bookmark your URL after you upload your text, so that way you can always go back to it and play around with different tools and look for certain words. One of the things that you can do is if the word that you're interested in, say when you read the text, doesn't show up as a very frequently used word, you can always type it in to any of the tools to view it and see what kind of connections you have, and that can be very useful. So if for some reason a certain word is making an impression on you during the reading, look it up and see what's going on with that word. All right, well, enjoy playing with Voyant.